Have you ever booked a hotel in a place that looked perfect online, only to arrive and feel like something was deeply wrong? The kind of place where the air feels heavier when you walk in, where the staff avoids eye contact, and where the silence in your room doesn't feel empty. It feels watched. Today's story isn't about ghosts in castles or haunted houses in the woods. It's about a beach hotel in Goa, India, a place known for beautiful sunsets, backpackers, and tropical getaways. But what happened to the man in this story wasn't a vacation. It was a slow, creeping descent into something he still can't explain. He checked into room 206, thinking he'd found peace. But peace never checked in with him. This story comes from someone who lived it and never talks about Goa the same way again. If you're someone who travels solo, this one might get under your skin. And if you like real horror stories told from real experiences, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now, here's what really happened in that hotel room by the sea. He had been traveling through Southeast Asia for nearly 2 months before he landed in Goa. Not for spiritual enlightenment or yoga retreats like most travelers in the area. No, he was just tired. Burned out from years of corporate grind back in Portland, and freshly single after a breakup that didn't end with shouting, but something worse. Silence. He was looking for quiet. When he arrived in Goa, it was just past tourist season. The beaches were still warm, the skies still blue, but the crowds were mostly gone. Everything was cheaper and more. Still, he wanted that. He found the hotel on a random booking site. Not fancy, not too rustic either. It had 5 or 6 photos, a white stucco exterior, bright turquoise shutters, and a balcony view of the sea. There were barely any reviews, just a few old ones saying the place was quiet and peaceful. That's all he needed. He booked it for 5 nights. When the taxi pulled into the hotel driveway, it was already late afternoon. The sun was just starting to dip, casting that golden pink glow across the ocean in the distance. The property looked almost exactly like the photos, except quieter. Too quiet. There was no music, no sound of other guests, no ocean breeze rustling through palm leaves. Just stillness, and the faint buzzing of something electrical near the check-in desk, like an old neon light trying to die. The man behind the counter was polite, but off somehow. He didn't ask for a passport, didn't offer the Wi-Fi password, just slid a key across the desk and said, "Room 206, second floor. Keep the windows closed at night." That part stuck with him later. Keep the windows closed at night. The room was fine, clean even. Simple white walls, an old ceiling fan clicking steadily overhead, and a small window overlooking the garden and the sea beyond. There was a strange, musty smell, but it wasn't unbearable. It smelled old, like wood that hadn't breathed in a while. He unpacked a little, rinsed off in the shower, and took a walk on the beach as the sun set. There were no other tourists, just a stray dog and a local kid flying a plastic kite near the rocks. When he got back to his room, it was dark. The hallway lights flickered slightly as he climbed the stairs. That first night, something odd happened. At around 1:47 a.m., he remembered because he checked his phone. He woke up to the sound of the bathroom door creaking open. Not a slam, not a knock, just a long, slow creak. He hadn't closed it all the way, so he figured it was just the sea breeze pushing it. But then he remembered what the man at the desk had said. Keep the windows closed at night. He sat up, looked over, and the window was open. He knew for a fact he had closed it before going out. He remembered specifically twisting the latch, but there it was, wide open. He got up, shut it again, this time latching it harder. The room suddenly felt colder, and he realized something else. The air didn't smell like the ocean anymore. It smelled like wet stone, like the inside of a basement. The next morning, he asked the receptionist casually, "Hey, do the windows ever unlock on their own? Mine was wide open last night." The man just stared for a second too long and said, "Wind can be strong this time of year." That was it. No smile, no concern, just those words. And as the man turned to the back office, he muttered something under his breath in Konkani, the local language. The traveler didn't speak it, but he caught one word: Andhar. Later, he'd learn it meant darkness. The second night was worse. He had trouble falling asleep. His phone kept losing signal, and the hotel's Wi-Fi was down. Not that it worked much anyway. The fan made an odd ticking noise now, louder than before. At some point, he drifted off, and then he heard it. 3 distinct knocks on the inside of his closet door. Not the hallway, not the main door, the closet, inside his room. He didn't move at first, just stared at the closet, willing himself not to blink. Then, 3 more knocks. This time, slower. He got up, heart pounding, and approached the door with shaking hands. It was one of those old-style wooden wardrobes, not a built-in closet. He placed his hand on the handle and found it ice cold. When he opened it, nothing. Just his backpack, hung-up shirt, and a pair of sandals. But something felt off. He went to close the wardrobe door and noticed something scratched into the inside panel of the door. 4 lines, deep and rough, like someone had clawed into it. The third night, he didn't sleep. He kept all the lights on, put on music from his phone, even though it cut out randomly. At around 3:10 a.m., the hallway light outside his door started flickering, not in random bursts, but in a rhythm, almost like Morse code. And then he heard it, a voice, muffled, coming from behind the mirror in the room. At first, it sounded like a radio broadcast, like a faraway conversation. But then it said something in clear English. "You're not alone here." The next morning, he checked out early. The receptionist didn't ask why. He just handed him the receipt, nodded slowly, and said, "Some rooms. Remember things." The traveler didn't respond. He got in a cab, left for another hotel 3 towns over, and never returned to that area again. He's back in the US now, has a regular job, regular life. Doesn't talk about that trip much, but he still has a photo saved on his phone from the first night. A blurry shot of the window, taken by accident while half asleep. If you zoom in just enough, you can see something in the reflection. Something standing just behind him. Something with no eyes. And a mouth that's open too wide. I've always been fascinated by places steeped in history. There's something about old buildings with their cracked walls and creaky floors that makes you feel like you're walking through the pages of a story written long ago. When I booked my trip to Goa, India, I deliberately avoided the usual touristy resorts. Instead, I found a listing for an old colonial-era hotel tucked away on a quiet stretch of coastline. The photos showed a whitewashed building with intricate balconies and a sprawling garden tangled with wild vines. It was beautiful in a way that felt frozen in time. The reviews were sparse, mostly travelers praising its peaceful atmosphere, but some mentioned odd occurrences, unexplained noises, and the sense that the hotel had a life of its own. That only piqued my curiosity. The taxi ride from the airport was a slow journey through winding roads shaded by tall palm trees. The city's bustle gradually gave way to small fishing villages and stretches of untouched beach. The sun hung low in the sky, painting everything with warm hues of orange and pink. When the taxi finally turned onto a narrow lane paved with worn cobblestones, I knew I was close. Ahead, the hotel appeared, bathed in the last light of day. Its white walls glowed softly, but the paint was cracked and peeling in places. Ornate balconies jutted out unevenly, and the garden gates were half hidden beneath a canopy of overgrown bougainvillea. The moment I stepped out, the air was thick with humidity, and the scent of salt mingled with something more subtle, a faint, musty odor like damp earth or forgotten memories. As I approached the entrance, the heavy wooden door groaned open before I could even knock. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit, with stained glass windows casting muted colors onto the polished floor. Dust particles floated lazily in the shafts of fading sunlight. Behind the front desk sat a woman in her 50s. Her eyes were tired but sharp, and she gave me a small, polite smile. She handed me an old brass key with a leather tag. Room 12, Garden View. Her voice was low as she said, "The hotel is quiet during the day, but some rooms, they have stories after dark." I laughed softly, dismissing her words as superstition. But as she looked at me, I caught a flicker of warning, or maybe regret, in her eyes. That night, as I walked through the garden, the peacefulness was unsettling. Shadows stretched long and seemed to twist beneath the moonlight. The garden, beautiful yet wild, held secrets I couldn't yet understand. The room was modest, furnished with dark wood and cream-colored linens. A ceiling fan spun lazily overhead, and a window looked out onto the tangled garden below. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of aged wood and something faintly metallic. I unpacked slowly, my fingers brushing over the rough surfaces of the furniture. On the far wall hung a faded photograph, black and white, decades old. It showed a crowd gathered in front of the hotel, dressed in colonial attire. At the edge of the photo stood a woman in a white dress, her face blurred but her eyes unnervingly clear, staring directly at the camera. The longer I stared, the more it felt like she was watching me. Later, I noticed small scratches on the floor near the closet. They looked fresh, jagged, as if clawed by something desperate. I told myself it was the building settling, or maybe stray animals. That first night, the sounds of the hotel seemed to come alive. Creaking floorboards, distant dripping water, and the occasional rustle of leaves outside. At midnight, I awoke to the sound of footsteps pacing the hallway just outside my door. They were slow, heavy, deliberate. Heart pounding, I peeked through the peephole. No one was there. Then a whisper slipped under the door, so faint I thought I'd imagined it. "Leave, before it's too late." I lay awake the rest of the night, the whisper echoing in my mind. The wind rattled the window, and the garden outside seemed unnaturally still. Determined to understand what I'd experienced, I spoke to the locals in the nearby village and the hotel staff during the day. They told me stories, half whispered, half confessed, about a young bride named Angeli who disappeared the night before her wedding decades ago. According to the tales, Angeli had been set to marry the wealthy owner of the hotel. On the night before the ceremony, she vanished without a trace. Despite searches and rumors, no one ever found her. Locals say her spirit wanders the hotel grounds, especially the garden where the faded photograph was taken. One hotel worker confided to me, "Some rooms remember what happened. They don't like strangers." One evening, I noticed a tapestry in the hallway slightly askew. Behind it was a narrow stairwell leading down into darkness. Drawn by equal parts fear and curiosity, I descended the steps into a cold, damp cellar. The air was thick with mildew. Old newspapers and photographs lay scattered on a wooden table. Among the clippings was a headline, "Tragedy at the Seaside Mansion. Bride vanishes without a trace." The article was nearly 80 years old. As I read, the chill in the room deepened. I felt eyes on me, but when I turned, the cellar was empty. That night, a low chant echoed through the corridors. It was distant, rhythmic, impossible to ignore. I followed the sound, the flickering hallway lights casting long shadows. Back in my room, the door slammed shut. The lights flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. Then I heard sobbing from the corner of the room. I turned on my phone's flashlight, illuminating the walls. Written in water stains were the words, "Don't stay." Fear gripped me. The hotel was no longer just a building. It was alive. I left at dawn, never looking back. The taxi ride through the quiet streets felt surreal, as if the city itself was trying to shake me free from the nightmare. Back home, the experience haunts me. The photo, the whispers, the message on the wall, they linger in my mind. I sometimes catch glimpses of a woman in white at the edge of my vision, a shadow that disappears when I turn. Some places aren't meant for tourists. Some stories aren't meant to be told.